Now that the 2024 election is underway, truly underway, today we're going to take a deep dive into the power of women voters and the role of climate change in the voter's mind with one of the foremost experts on women voters on the planet. Most women, it's true, most women and the climate, both, let me do this, Brett, edit this out. Both women and the climate are very, very potent, especially in this pivotal election when democracy itself is on the ballot. Women voters have made all the difference in recent elections of all types and across the globe, as well as in the United States. And by the way, over 50% of the global population is voting in 2024. It's kind of astonishing. As President Biden said in his State of the Union address last night, politicians, political parties, and the courts are going to discover just how powerful a political and electoral force women really are. So grab your notepad and pen or tablet to take notes and listen up. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We share stories, insights, tips, and advice from remarkably innovative women working on the front lines of corporate responsibility, energy, sustainability, and climate-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. We also give career advice in every episode, especially at the end, but it's often sprinkled throughout, so listen closely. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my Forbes blog as well. And please pass it on to your friends and leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. It helps other people find us. So women voters have been making their voices heard big time. In off-year elections, in even ballot-only elections, in massive protests, by signing petitions on issues they care about en masse. It's actually quite remarkable. This year, 2024, women voters are the most significant and important voting bloc because women are 51% of the population and active, passionate voters. In the past, at least, women have been values-based voters, where men have tended to vote, well, differently. And we'll find out about that more today. What are women expected to do this year? Let's ask a master. I'd like you to meet Celinda Lake, founder and CEO of Lake Research Partners, one of the foremost opinion and market research companies in the United States and across the globe for about 30 years, I think. Celinda and her team have focused on progressive issues from the economy to women's rights, reproductive rights, human rights, the environment, gun violence, yada, yada, yada. She was one of the only lead posters for the Biden campaign in 2020 and continues to work with the Democratic National Committee and challengers and incumbents across local, state, and federal campaigns, and also on initiatives. You've probably seen her in the media, commenting on political issues, candidates, and voters' trends. I could take about 2 weeks to go through her resume, which I won't do, but I will suffice it to say that many of the terms you hear for identifying types of voters were actually coined by Celinda. She hails from the great state of Montana, earned her master's degree in poli-sci and survey research from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, a certificate in political science from the University of Geneva in Switzerland, earned her undergraduate degree at Smith College, and from Smith College, summa cum laude, of course, and has won many awards, including from her peers. A Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Association of Political Consultants. And full disclosure, Celinda has been a friend of mine for many years, been on several panels for me at events and conferences, and one of my most highlighted sources for all things politics and elections. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the amazing Celinda Lake to Electric Ladies Podcast. Welcome, Celinda. We finally made it happen.
We did. Thank you so much. And this is so exciting. I love this podcast. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And happy International Women's Day. To start our discussion, just tell me about the female voter today. Who is she? Where is she? What does she care about?
Well, first of all, she's the majority of voters, as you noted. And in every demographic and political group, women now register and turn out in higher numbers than their male counterparts. She has 53% of the electorate, 59% of Democratic primaries. And really, the fortunes of the president, she will decide the presidency. The key for Democrats is to win women by more than they lose men. And right now, a lot of women are sitting in third party, not sure, undecided, maybe I won't vote. So she is a key swing vote as well as part of the Democratic base. She is not monolithic, though. A 40-year-old woman can be a young college educated woman. She can be a single mom, woman of color. She can be a grandmother. And so she's not monolithic at any age or demographic. And understanding all the different kinds of women out there is very important.
Yeah, there's you can't lump demographics together in any category these days, right? So why do you think that so many women are sitting in third party, not sure what I'm going to do categories? I mean, they came out in droves for reproductive rights initiatives, abortion rights for initiatives. They made the difference for President Biden. He's done an enormous amount for abortion rights and women's rights and values-based initiatives. So why are so many women sitting on the sideline?
And by the way, they pushed for our first woman VP as well. So I think many women are really torn right now. They're worried about the economy, and they often find both parties out of touch with their economic reality. The average woman goes to the grocery store 3 times a week. So she's well aware of inflation, and she's focused on food prices and healthcare costs. And both have been very high inflationary items. She's worried about stability and security. She's particularly worried about things consistently heading in the right direction rather than up and down and always surprised, because she often feels, whether it's at home with her family or at work, that she's the one holding it together and pulling everybody together to head in the same direction. Women are very pro-choice and very pro-abortion, and the Dobbs decision really motivated a lot of women, made them 10 points more pro-abortion than they had been in the past, because many women did not think that Roe v. Wade would ever be overturned. And the most recent Alabama IVF decision really radicalized a lot of women who thought, well, they've already done all they can do. They're not going to do any more. And it's like, no, they're not done yet. They're on the road to a national abortion ban, national ban on contraception, investigating miscarriages, jailing providers, doing away with medication abortion, and now IVF and God knows what. So women are very, very focused on that, whether they're living in a pro-choice state or a state that is not totally pro-abortion. They're very focused on abortion right now.
So is it abortion that's going to get women of all stripes to the polls in November, or is it that abortion is going to help women cross party lines and vote to secure their rights over and above other issues?
Both, frankly.
Wow.
Both. And what we've seen, where there have been initiatives, and there are a number of initiatives on the ballot in a lot of key swing states like Arizona, or just recently were on the ballot like in Ohio, the women are mobilized, particularly younger women and women of color. And some women of color, like African American women, who had once had more reservations about abortion, now are completely in favor of guaranteeing access and guaranteeing the right, and feel like who's kidding whom, who will be affected most by the bans and the cutting back and the travel, inability to travel, inability to get healthcare insurance to pay for abortions. So it'll mobilize young women, it'll mobilize women of color, it'll mobilize college educated women, and then it will persuade women, and particularly that key group of independent women who are very influenced, and they see it in a broader way. It's not just abortion is not a narrow issue. They feel that there is one party here and one force, the MAGA Republicans, not all Republicans, but the MAGA Republicans, who really want to control women. And it's a bunch of older white guys who really want to make the most personal decisions for women. And it's none of their, and people who are having healthcare issues, and it's none of their business.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually heard saw the soundbite of the candidate for North Carolina governor
Oh, God,
say that he wanted to go back to a time before women had the right to vote, which is just kind of
hard to
astonishing. And
imagine.
I mean, how can, I,
How do you even
I'm,
say that? How does that thought even occur to you? And why do you think that's a viable thought politically? It's just amazing to me.
exactly. So why, I mean, this may sound like a naive question, but why are there so many women that vote to support
Mm.
the party that supports those kinds of issues? I mean, why do they even vote for them at all?
Well, it's a good question, and there are fewer women than men, but it's about a lot of different things. A lot of people don't believe that Donald Trump is that anti abortion. And that was particularly a factor in 2016. In 2016, I was moderating focus groups at the tail end of the campaign in Michigan, and I said, Donald Trump says he will defund Planned Parenthood. And the group laughed at me. And I said, I can show you the clip on CNN. He said it. And one woman stood up and she said, are you kidding me? He's paid for 3 abortions at Planned Parenthood. Now, he has produced a Supreme Court that made these decisions, but he was very quick on the IVF decision to say, no, 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 that's not me. So he's very wily about these issues. And a lot of women don't vote the Supreme Court. They'll vote the substance of the issues, but not the process as much. There are a lot of women influenced by their husbands and relying on their husbands for their information. There are a lot of hardcore Republican women. There are a lot of women voting for strong leadership and the economy. But many, many women are turned off by Donald Trump's style. And recently, his vote among women has really declined, in part because of the way he treats Haley, the way he treats um, the rape victim in New York, the way he treats Pelosi or Harris, no matter which one he's talking about at the time. And women really don't like his style. And they're much less willing to make excuses for it. They think it's divisive. They think it's very damaging to the country, and they think it's a bad role model for their children.
Will the court cases make any difference?
They will, and that's why they're getting postponed. Now,
Yeah.
we'll have a reinforcement on the abortion cases with the jailing providers from Idaho and the medication abortion decision. But women also say that if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony for trying to steal the elections or take the elections by a jury of ordinary people, they will not vote for him. And that's why they're madly trying to postpone these trials.
Wow. Um, do you think that President Biden's State of the Union address last night will make a difference especially on women voters?
I do. I think it was very reassuring. A lot of women are just really worried about the age and effectiveness of the president. And the right is really running major disinformation campaigns about senility and being a puppet. And I think you saw, sure, he made some stumbles. He always makes some stumbles. But you saw someone strong, feisty, fighting for you, in command, quick on his feet for a long period of time. And I think it was really, really reassuring to the base and very reassuring to a lot of women voters.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was impressed as well. Climate change was one of the top 5 issues in some research that I saw from Lake Research from last September. Now, of course, lots has happened since then, but it was even higher than abortion, which was interesting to me. And we've had more extreme weather, more severe extreme weather in more kind of weird places too, since then, with even more to come since before the election in November. What impact do these weather events have on women in the voting booth, from what you can tell?
Women are very worried about these events, and they're the ones that really worry about the impact on communities. They worry that whether you're talking about a Kentucky or a Maui, these communities have not recovered. They are incensed and remember the vivid imagery of Donald Trump throwing paper towels at people from Puerto Rico who were out of their homes. And they like the compassionate president. They like someone who's in tune. They want to leave a better country for their children. And interestingly, non-parent women are more pessimistic than moms about the future we're leaving our children. So, and it's really fascinating. women have been very influenced by their children and their grandchildren. They will say that climate change is something that really is on my agenda more because my children talk to me about it, and they listen to their children and grandchildren. That said, people also, the urgency around climate change ebbs and flows a little bit. Many of the single issue climate change voters are also single issue war in Gaza voters. So that's pushed this issue out a little bit. But in the long run, women are very worried about the climate. They're worried about damage to the climate. They really respond to that word. They're very worried about pollution, destruction of communities. So they have a holistic view here. And they think there is no question that the climate has changed. And whether it's man-made or not is immaterial to what kind of planet we're going to leave our children.
Wow, that's reassuring. What is it about, like, how do you reach those people about climate change? You said the word damage, it sounds like you were saying, is very resonant. What's the best way to communicate about it to reach them? Is it the words climate change? Is it just climate? Is it, extreme weather? It's not going to be ESG because that's kind of a corporate word, even if,
Right.
we can spend an hour talking about that, which we won't. But what is the language that resonates most with women around the climate issue?
First off, the language that resonates the most is language that talks about the way that people live things in real lived experience. So not degrees of temperature or, statistics or acronyms. And that's true for the economy too, and a lot of other things. It's extreme weather, damage to the climate, health issues that are more serious. So the way this impacts everyday people's real lived experience. As I said, they're very deferential to people who report on the weather. Believe it or not, weathermen and weather women have a huge impact, and they're perceived to be impartial. They're not perceived to be a political force. Women are also very responsive to public servants. So first responders who say, "I'm seeing this more." Healthcare providers who say, "I'm seeing this more." Nurses, that kind of thing. Really. The people that translate into costs for human beings, the people that are impartial public servants, the people who have firsthand on the ground experience. Unfortunately, women like men think there are scientists on both sides of this equation. And it's infuriating because it's 999 scientists to one. But the way the press covers this issue, they put up one scientist on each side, and it makes it seem like half the scientists have one position, half the scientists have the other, when in fact, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, well, that goes to one of the things I wanted to ask you, which is how do opinion researchers like yourself get past the polarization and the siloed information vacuums that we live in? I mean, we have more media than ever in the history of the world, and yet people listen to this much, to a tiny piece that agrees with them. And if somebody says something they don't like, they flip the channel and go back to their favorite, right? So their other favorite. So how do pollsters like you and your team get past that to find out what people really feel?
It's complicated now. It's really hard. And then you also have, for the first time, we were really flummoxed in the 2020 election because for the first time we had a major candidate, Donald Trump, telling people not to participate in the polls or lie to the pollsters. We've never had that before. So it's difficult. But we ask questions about people's attitudes, and then we'll ask them about their friends and family. Like a lot of people will say, "Oh, yeah, I would vote for a woman if she were qualified." There's that qualifier. If she were qualified, like the men are doing such a great job. But they also are more honest when we ask, "Well, who do you think your friends and neighbors would vote for?" We ask it from a variety of perspectives. We ask people, some people say, other people say. We will say, or like many people, "Do you feel this way?" So we try to mix it up, the different perspectives. We try to ask multiple questions on the same topic, and we try to lower people's barriers to telling us the truth by giving them permission to say what they really believe.
what's the most effective? Online, telephone interviews, focus groups? I mean, obviously you have to mix it all up to really get to find out what people want, but what are there ways to reach people who are difficult to reach?
Yes. So, first off the bat, all of the above. And the best surveys, but they're the most expensive, are mixed mode, where I try to reach you on the telephone, I'll try to reach you online, I'll try to reach you text online. I will call you 3 times, I will leave a message, I will give you a 1-800 number to respond to. So, trying to get people multiple different ways on multiple different times on multiple different days is very, very important. There's also qualitative, like the focus groups, versus quantitative, like the surveys, and they tell us different things. Like we just did a some research on abortion, going back to that topic, and we tested codify Roe v. Wade. Well, it turns out about 40% of the people don't know what the word codify means. I mean, they can kind of imagine from the context, but it's a highfalutin word. And then when we tested Roe v. Wade in focus groups, people said, well, you know, Roe v. Wade was once the standard of the land, but it's not the standard anymore. We have an entirely different game in town. So you should just talk about national guarantee or national ban. So again, things change, and understanding how people are thinking about things, the connections that they're making. We often talk about equality, and the people that are really supportive of equality want to talk about equity for understandable reasons. Well, it turns out people don't think equity means equality. They think it means the investment you have in your house. So understanding how people are hearing what we have to say, very, very important.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm conscious of that when I use the word in speaking gigs, especially, and stuff, and in all kinds of content, because there's a lot, and of course there's equities in terms of stocks, right? Um,
Right.
what's your
And
take? I
even
mean,
the
a lot.
area you were interested in, like the environment, when we tested the idea of green new jobs, people
Yeah.
like that, but they think green new jobs are jobs for environmentalists. When you say jobs in renewable energy, jobs in clean energy, they think, oh, well, that's me. That's everybody could have those jobs. So again, it's not even pejorative. It's just narrowing to say green new jobs, because people think, well, I don't know that I have a green old job or any kind of green job. I'm not an environmentalist.
That's so insightful. I love that. Yeah, that's really powerful. I like that. Um, there's a perception that polling got 2026 dramatically wrong, of course, that showed that Hillary was going to win. Now, the reality is, in some ways, it got it completely right, because she did win the popular vote by 3 million some odd votes. So, but we vote, unfortunately, still by the Electoral College, which I think is outdated, but that's another topic for another day. What do you think polling got wrong, and what do you think has been corrected since then to make sure that those same errors don't happen again?
So, first off the bat, I will say that the public polls are more often run than the private polls. Most of the polling that a firm like mine does, we don't release the data, it's private. And we take all of that added expense of trying to reach people multiple times, etc. That gets better quality polling than the news media, who are often trying to do it for limited budgets. Secondly, we had it almost really basically even. And so we had Hillary just a point ahead. Um, and part of that was turnout models. And what most of, and we didn't get it completely right, but the turnout models are what are so important. Who do you think is going to actually participate? Because these are supposed to be polls, not of everybody, but of likely voters. And the higher the turnout, usually the better the Democrat does. We also underestimated, a lot of pollsters, not our firm, but a lot of other pollsters underestimated the Trump surge, because they were seeing more Trump voters come in. We let that happen. Other people were weighting that down because they said, no way Trump's generating a surge. Well, we now know now he does have a bunch of crazy, totally supportive, go to the end of the earth kind of supporters who come out just to vote for him. I think the things that all of us are trying to do to correct is get the turnout right, Make sure that we can reach more people because participation rates are plummeting. And I hope all your listeners will answer the polls. And also to make sure that we don't replace a Biden voter with a Trump voter or vice versa. We all have methods now that we try to control that if we are getting someone we think is likely to be a Trump voter and they say no to us or they don't answer, that we replace them with someone who is likely to be a Trump voter. Don't replace them with a likely Biden voter. But it's complicated. It's hard to get it right. Everyone's getting some right and some wrong. And it's getting increasingly complicated to do good polling.
I thank you. I appreciate your candor on that. One quick thing before, and then I want to get some career advice from you, but I could talk to you about this stuff for about 4 hours. As I said, you're originally from Montana. Impact has, I mean, I've lived in 8 states, and you, as you know, because you've followed me all these years, but what impact has growing up in Montana had on how you do your research and analysis?
One of the major things that it has done for me is many of the Democratic pollsters come from blue states. I came from a purple state at best and a red state. So it changed it profoundly influenced my sense of strategy. If I just got out the base in Montana, even when I was growing up, Republicans would have been elected, not Democrats. Now, I was also born and raised a Democrat. So one of the things that influenced me is I don't hate all Democrats. My family's are all Republicans. My family's Republicans. I don't agree with them necessarily on all the issues. I think they're being misled by poor leaders. I think Trump has been very distorting, but it gives me a respect for everyone. And in fact, a Republican pollster was a good friend of mine, Ed Goes. We wrote a book together called It's a Question of Respect. He started out a Democrat, became a Republican. I started out a Republican, became a Democrat. We switched in exactly the same year, 1972. And so it's always given us some real insight, and I think it's underpinned our friendship as well. But you got to listen to people. You have to have respect for them. I think, so many people will say, well, voters are so dumb. Voters are not dumb. They're ill-served. They're not dumb. They're actually quite smart. And people will say things like, well, African Americans don't have any information. African American voters have some of the most information of anyone. They are some of the best informed on current events. It's stunning. They will know foreign affairs and all kinds of things that a lot of white voters have no ideas about. So respecting the voters, listening to the voters, that's what makes you a good pollster in my mind.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So before I let you go, I like to give career advice to mid-career women. So think about a woman who maybe has been in one of your focus groups, who's had maybe 15 years of experience, an education. She knows what she does well. She wants to make money and advance in her career, but she wants to make a difference with who she is and what she knows how to do. What would you tell her?
Well, a couple of things. I think one thing I would tell her is that ageism is alive and well. You and I have both talked about this as friends and experienced it. And as you're going into that mid-career, it can be tough on women. And ageism is worse for women. I firmly believe that. The second thing I would say is women often have far more skills than their resumes translate into. And actually, we're going into a good period now where I think employers and organizations are looking for the skill set that you have more than the job titles that you have. And that's good for women because we have a lot of skills that we will have acquired in different arenas. Bring in all women I see are so much more involved in their communities. They're doing the charity work. They're supporting the schools. Bring that work in because people are really interested in public service and what you've learned from those non-paid roles as well as those paid outside the home roles. And then persistence and don't take it personally. It can be really depressing. We all internalize it, right? It feels like personal rejection. The guys get mad at the people who don't hire them. We feel bad about ourselves. And that is classic women. It's tough out there. It requires resilience. But just remember that you have a tremendous amount to offer. And you know it. And sooner or later, somebody's going to figure that out too. Then the last thing I would say is, and both of us have done this, it's very hard, but entrepreneurship of one kind or another, whether it's a podcast or a business or a nonprofit, can be very rewarding. It's really tough. There's no question about it. But women are fantastic entrepreneurs. They are fantastic leaders because they take better care of employees and customers, and they take a 360-degree view. And if we're going to get the kind of change we want in making our economy better and our world better, we need more women in leadership. So stick with it and know that. And I think the last thing I would say, and I go back to Madeleine Albright, who's one of my favorite people, always stand up for another woman. Always put your foot in the door to bring another woman in behind you. And as she said, there's a special place in hell for the women who don't support women.
Here to that, especially on International Women's Day. Absolutely. Yeah. And you and I can talk more about that. I'm writing a book on some of these issues, so we can
fantastic.
talk more about that. Yeah, that's a whole nother
really
interview.
Excited by that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Any final thoughts before I let you get back to to finding out what people think?
Well, one of my most favorite possessions is I have my grandmother's copy, who was a German immigrant. I'm not even sure she could read very well English. It's Up to the Women by Eleanor Roosevelt. And I have her copy of that book, which is just one of my prized possessions. But I will remind women, it's up to us. We are going to determine who's going to win elections up and down. So vote, inform yourself, inform your neighbor, pass it on, and don't let crazy Uncle Joe sell Trump out there all the time. Make sure people have alternative information.
And when you mean crazy Uncle Joe, you don't mean POTUS.
Oh, no, I don't mean Joe Biden. Good point.
No.
I should say crazy Uncle George. Good point.
There you go. Yeah.
Crazy Uncle George. No. Crazy Uncle George is always hammering pro-Trump.
Yeah, be careful of the people who have drunk that Kool-Aid, because it's dangerous and it's anti-women. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Electric Ladies Podcast. Celinda Lake of Lake Research Partners. I think people will never look at polling again the same way. They'll have much better understanding of it. So what do you think about polling? Do you think that do you pay attention to it? Does it affect your vote? Does it influence you in any way? What questions do you have for Celinda? Post it to me on Twitter @Joan Michelson and send us any questions there. And you may win a complimentary coaching session with me. And you can subscribe also on our website to our newsletter, electricladiespodcast.com. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, please, please vote every time there's an election, especially in 2024. See you next time.